The thing about that is to understand that the transition that occurs when you begin to study the teachings and take the teachings to heart, and when you begin to study the practices and you take the practices to heart and you begin to do the practices, which is now you're moving in the direction of taking this on, right? Taking these things on because you've recognized that there's truth in these things. These things are true, and therefore you don't want to continue to operate as a inauthentic person. Inauthenticity means you're not real, okay? You don't want to continue to operate as an inauthentic person. And so when we practice, we sit still and we be silent, right? And we start to develop our ability to be paying attention, to notice what's happening, right? And when you do that, you're shedding light maybe for the first time for some people. You're shedding the light. You're putting the light of awareness on the identity, on the entity that you have been being in your life. You're putting the light of awareness on that. Yeah, and when you put the light of awareness on that, what comes up is restlessness, right? Because now the entity, the personality, which is still in existence in your thinking, still in existence in your way of being, right? Because it was something that was so ingrained in your brain and was something that was so much the reality you were experiencing all your life up until you started to learn about these things, right? That's not going to just disappear, right? No, as I said in the last class, even if you wake up and you recognize the truth and you know you're not the person, so if the person was traumatized, you realize that you weren't traumatized, right? But your brain still traumatized, right? And in the same way, your brain is still running the programming of you being a person. And now you're looking at it. And so when you look at it, the light of awareness shining on this unstable entity causes it to start to be restless. It starts to, it's you could say it kind of doesn't like the light. It kind of doesn't want this to happen, right? And so it starts feeding, it can feed anxiety, it can feed restlessness in the physical body. Even when you go to practice meditation for people who are new, just to sit still for any period of time and not move is something they haven't done in their entire life. That's amazing, right? To sit still and not move is something they haven't done in their entire life. Or to be quiet that long for many people is something they haven't done in their entire life. So what you're doing is you're kind of rattling the cage, you're kind of shaking the foundation of this idea that you have been existing as this entity or as this person. And so it's going to bring up restlessness. In other words, another word I'm saying is it's to be expected. Okay. It's if it didn't happen, I'd be concerned, right? Because I would be wondering whether you're stepping over that, whether you're ignoring that, whether you're there's a concept they talk about in these teachings called spiritual bypassing. Have you ever heard that?
No, but I can understand what you're going to say, but go ahead.
Yeah. Spiritual bypassing means that you use spiritual practices and teachings as a way of avoiding your feelings, a way of avoiding your psychological material, a way of avoiding whatever needs to be faced about you and your life, right? And so that's called spiritual bypassing. And so it's something to be on the lookout for. And if it wasn't the case that you were experiencing restlessness, then there'd be a concern that maybe that's what's going on. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. All you want to do is become a spirit, and you don't want to deal with your psychology. You don't want to deal with your body. You don't want to deal with life, right? So in a sense, the restlessness is a good sign. It means that you are looking at this entity. You are shedding light on it, and when you shed light on it, it will reveal the truth. It will reveal that there is no such thing as this personality other than the thinking that it exists, other than the belief in it, other than the mass delusion That's part of what makes these things difficult, is that there's a mass delusion about it, right? That humanity as a whole is suffering a delusion, suffering from a misunderstanding about reality, about its true nature. So when you move out of that, when you step out of line, you're not part of the traffic anymore. When you step out of line and you start to be still, right? Then you start to see. You see, because when you begin to see, which actually the case, right? The personality, which is already unstable, right? Which is already uncertain, right? Starts to wobble even more, because now you're looking at it, you see. And so this business of there being restlessness is something that all you have to do is understand that it's par for the course. It's a necessary and expected aspect of the process of waking up. It's a necessary and expected process of coming into your true nature, of experiencing yourself.
So I shouldn't translate it as a failure of
No.
what I'm doing.
No. No, it's not a failure at all. No, it's just what is to be expected. If you wade into the water, you're going to get wet. If you shine light on the unstable personality that you've considered yourself to be, it's going to wobble because it's not real. It can't demonstrate that it exists. So when you look at it, right? When you look at it, it wobbles because it can't demonstrate that it exists. It has. That's why thinking is such a big deal, because its existence is dependent upon thinking. When you're not thinking, see, that's the thing. Even in meditation, when you're not thinking, and that's why it's important to really be clear that there are periods when there is no thinking, and you really need to pay attention so you can notice that. And when you're not thinking, there is no person. This is the essence of the teaching. When you're not thinking, there is no person, because there is no one that is there interpreting anything anymore. That's what the thinking is doing, There is no one there is no you who you thought was the thinker. There is no one who is you who you thought was the thinker anymore. It's not there, right? And yet, even though it's not there, the awareness knows. This is so important, right? Because people are dependent upon thinking. You have to, thinking and doing, Human beings are thinking and doing machines. Thinking and doing machines. That's why when you talk to them about being, it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm not, if you talk to people about these teachings, they say, okay, so tell me how to do that, right? They want to know what to do, because everybody has been conditioned to do. To think and do, think and do, think and do. Look, if you look at the society and you look at the way society talks to the youth about, who to be, what to grow up and do and be and everything, the language is all think and do. Go to school, that's a do, right? When you're given schoolwork to do, you develop your thinking ability, right? Yeah, it's all thinking and remembering. Think, remember, regurgitate. Think, remember, play back, over and over again. So you're taking all this on, and what you're taking on is that you are a thinker. Your power in the world is a function of your ability to think. Your power in the world is a function of your ability to think and your ability to do. Think and act, think and act, think and act. There's no be there. There's no be there. There's no consciousness there. It's a machine. It's a mechanical machine. Think and act. And that's why there is this fundamental instability and insecurity, because if you look to see who's behind the curtain, you remember in The Wizard of Oz? Okay? If you pull the curtain back, right? There is no wizard. There is no wizard. There's this frightened little man, right? And that's the same thing that happens when you do this work. You begin to understand that this idea you had about who you are, when you shine the light of awareness on it, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. No wonder you feel insecure, No wonder you feel restless, Because you're trying to maintain the existence of something that's not actually there. And the only way you can keep it there, right, is to do things that indicate that there's a doer of those things.
Well,
there's always a resolution, but it might not be a resolution you can see given the way you're looking or where you're looking from. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, there's always a resolution. There's always a resolution, because if you include in the idea of there being a resolution that one of the possibilities for resolving something is that there's no resolution, that's a resolution.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So anything can be resolved.
Okay.
Anything can be resolved, but there are things that there is no resolution for. The resolution is to simply be present to what's happening. That's all. You can't do any more than that, right? So the cure, right, is to sit through it, to sit it out, right? Because this restlessness will manifest in terms of fearful thinking, rumination. It may even start in the body, where you can't sit still, tapping your feet, or you can't, like that. And so the meditation process is one where you're just gonna sit it out.
Okay.
You're gonna let whatever comes come, right? And you're just gonna sit with it and let it go, let it come, let it go, let it go, let it come, let it go. You're just gonna, so now you become the stable factor. That you're sitting with whatever comes and goes, right? And the you that's sitting with whatever comes and goes is the awareness that is real, is constant, and is the truth about who you are, that has been being ignored because you were preoccupied with being a typical human being, which means that you're ignorant. Yeah, if you're a typical human being, you're ignorant, and you, as a typical human being, you are involved in the constant activity of trying to demonstrate that you exist. That's what people are doing all the time. If you look at their behavior, right, they're going somewhere, they're doing something, they're improving something, they're changing something, right? It's all stuff to be used. It's all activity to be used to infer that there's somebody doing it. That's how the entity of the personality maintains its existence. It says something, an action happens, and it says, I took that action. A thought happens, I thought that thought. A feeling happens, I felt that feeling. I fixed it. So the way the mind and the brain produces the illusion that there's a you, no matter what happens, it says, I experienced it, I felt it, I thought it, I did it, right? Now, there is no reality of anybody there doing anything, right? It just becomes an inferred idea. It just becomes an inferred idea. It's inferred that I did it. If you just use thinking to examine it, you can see upon examination, there is no evidence that you're the thinker. There's no evidence that. It's one of the places that you can see pretty clearly the truth, right? In terms of looking to see, right, when thoughts occur, are you the source of those thoughts? When thoughts occur, are they your thoughts? When thoughts occur, did you think the thought? And if you look at what the evidence says no, you didn't. The evidence says the thought happened in your awareness, you became aware of it, right? And then you claimed it. Then you said, I did that. But it happened before you said, I did that. It happened by itself. And then you said, I did that. Same thing with actions. The body does something and you say, that's me, the body's me, and I did that. It goes on all the time, right? But it becomes such a constant, you learn this so early on in your life that you don't have to add, I did that anymore. You don't have to add, I thought that anymore. You don't have to add, I felt that anymore. It's like, that question's been answered. If there's actions, I took them. If there's thoughts, I thought them. If there's feelings, I felt them, right? However, if you examine, you cannot find any you. You cannot find any evidence for this phantom that you have come to believe actually exists. And when the cover gets pulled off, when you look, maybe for the first time, right, and you see the absence of anything real, the absence of a real person, right, and then you sit still and pay attention, of course you're going to be restless. Yeah, because that's right. Yeah, because you're going to be restless because what you're left with is that which is formless, right, and who you think you are doesn't like it. No, I don't. What's that? What's that? What's nothing? What's nothing? What's formless? What's awareness? How do I be that? I don't know, you see? And so that's all restlessness, right? But you just sit through that. You just sit through that and you discover that there are opportunities in the practice of meditation to have a direct experience of the awareness that's always there and have a direct experience of the fact that that awareness knows. It knows. That's what knows. There is no person to know anything. Everything you've ever known was known by awareness, was known by the actual reality of who you are, right? Yeah, so that's the thing that's now becoming revealed. It's a revelation. It's becoming revealed because now you're paying attention where you weren't. Now you're looking at what you didn't look at yet, right? And when you look for the evidence, why do you look for the evidence? You look for the evidence because the evidence is what indicates something's real, doesn't it? Yeah. It exists. Yeah, and there's no evidence that you exist. There's no evidence. In Buddhism, they actually say, this can be a little confusing, but in Buddhism, they actually say no self. There is no self anywhere. There is no self. There's no self. All there is what's happening. Yeah. In other words, another way of saying that is if you say there is no self, there is nothing that exists like a thing that doesn't change, but that you call a self. There is no thing called the self. The self is a verb. The self is something that's happening all the time, right? There is nothing in the universe that just stays the same except the awareness. There's nothing in the universe that doesn't change except the awareness. And then, I'll just throw this in case you think you understand. And then, if you stay in the process and in the practice, right, it comes all the way around. The circle completes itself, right? And you find out even what you thought you were that didn't exist is what you are. Because if you do the full circle, you come to see the personality. The personality is the actual self. The personality is the actual self because there's nothing but the self. There's nothing separate from the self. There's nothing separate from consciousness. So the personality is the self. You just didn't know that before. Now you come to see that, right, and you realize, well, how does that work? Well, the way it works is the personality is the awareness that had to forget that it was the awareness in order to be in the world and play the game of life. You have to have a body to do it. You have to have a identity to do it, right? You have to have a driver's license, right, to be in this world. Try to be in this world with no ID. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go, right? You got to have ID to be in the world, right? But that doesn't mean that you are that. It just means that the ID is part of the necessary reality for us to play this game we're playing with each other. That's all. And when you begin to see that, and if you can tolerate the process of sitting through, the restlessness and so forth, then you start to experience have a direct experience of that which knows, that which is real, right? And then the process begins. That's when the real psychotherapy begins. When you know what you're not, when you know what you're not, now you can start to deal with how that keeps showing up. When you know what you're not, and thoughts come up about that you're not, you can now see it for what it is, right? Because you now see what you are, right? But you see, it's not that you see what you are. When you see what you're not, you realize that where you're seeing that from is real. You can't name it. It's not, you can't name it. It's non-conceptual. You can't talk about it, but it's real. And the reason that it's real is because it's an experience. You're experiencing it. It's experiencing you, actually, right? It's actually experiencing you. The awareness is experiencing you, right? But we could say that you're experiencing it if you want to talk about it that way. Yeah, but the reality of it now that you know what you're not, you can start paying attention and watch how what you're not keeps trying to exist. Now that you know what you're not, you can begin paying attention and watch how what you're not keeps trying to exist, keeps trying to use thinking to exist, keeps trying to use emotions to exist, keeps trying to use the physical sensations in your body to exist. But you have to catch it in the crime. You have to catch it in the crime. You have to catch it inferring that you exist because a thought occurred, and you have to take that out of it. You have to say, no, that's not true. A thought happened, and right, the thought happened, and the inference that you believed for all these years is, I thought that thought, right? But now you have to police that. Now you have to pay attention to that because you know what you're not, and you have to see it try and exist. This is what self-inquiry is all about. You see that the way the self propagates itself is to use whatever happens and claim it.
Okay.
Use whatever happens and claim it. So when you know that and you can watch it try and do it, you intervene. You don't let it claim it. You stop letting this idea you have about who you are claim your thoughts, claim that it's thinking. Now that you've looked and seen that that's not true, right? Now you have to pay attention because you'll keep making the mistake again and again and again. So now you have to pay attention and realize when a thought occurs, that's not me thinking. This is important because if you don't recognize that it's not you thinking, thinking is so corrupt, right? That the thinking is so corrupt in terms of the way it uses judging and evaluating and arrogance and domination and all the other shit that people do, right? It's so corrupt that it will do that to the other people and the world, but it'll also do that to you. So if you think it's you thinking, when you think you're horrible, when you think you're stupid, right? You suffer, right? And that's more evidence that the voice isn't you unless you're truly crazy, right? But the teachings tell us, no, you're not crazy, you're just deluded, you're just confused, you just think you're something that you're not. And when you see the truth about that, when a thought arises that you're stupid, you dismiss it. You dismiss it because now you're going to catch it in the act, right? Now you're going to catch it in the act. The thought, you're stupid, occurs, and when that occurs, there's an automatic relationship to it, like I thought that thought, and if that relationship is there, you suffer, because then you feel stupid, right? But if that relationship isn't there and you see the thought arise that you're stupid, you just dismiss it. It's no longer relevant. It's no longer relevant because now you know the truth. You know that you don't think your thoughts. So if that thought arises, right, it was just a thought that got triggered, right? Something happened, it triggered that thought, it brought that thought up, right? But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what's going on. That's just the mind and the brain operating mechanically. And therefore, you can just dismiss it. And that's the practice. That's the practice. If you don't actively engage with the thinking and the feelings and the physical body and all that, with the awareness of the truth, if you don't actively engage with that stuff, it's just going to stay the same. It's going to stay the same. And then, now watch, this is very important. And then people who get involved with this, right, to try and use it to control everything, that's when they'll complain. Oh, it's not working. I've been practicing meditation, for a whole month now, and I'm still not happy. So I'm going to start drinking again. That's what people do. That's what people do, right? So you have to understand, this is not going to just change because you wish it to be so. This isn't going to change just because you practice meditation a few times. This isn't even going to change if you study Buddhism and you understand the Buddhist philosophy thoroughly, right? No, that's not enough. That's not enough. You have to see it firsthand in your own experience, and then you have to go to work and start to pay attention, right? So you can recondition your own brain. And that's going to take some time. Okay, you still want to do that?
I needed that.
Good. Okay, go home.